In this lesson, we'll begin a review of Reading Test 7, Section 1, the first passage, which we know to be the literary passage. So let's take a look at the reference information. Remember, this is always helpful to give you some idea as to the characters and the context, the setting. This passage is adapted from George Eliot, Silas Marner, originally published in 1861. Silas was a weaver and a notorious miser, but then the gold he had hoarded was stolen. Shortly after, Silas adopted a young child, Eppie, the daughter of an impoverished woman who had died suddenly. And so I'm not reading this whole passage. I assume you've read it, and that is the best way is to read it, try it independently, and then review these videos. It's really not going to have much benefit if you just watch these videos without reading it. And really, this passage was about, again, this information is helpful. This Silas Marner, who was a notorious miser, he was very thrifty. He hoarded his gold, and all he thought about was his gold had kind of locked him into his existence, and he lived in solitude. But then he adopted this young child, Eppie, and he really started noticing how this little girl re-energized him. He restored his vitality. He became more engaged in life. So again, hopefully you've read this. So let's take a look at the questions. All right, so question number 1, which choice best describes a major theme? Now, this is a general question. Major theme, remember, we're talking about the whole passage. Sometimes it'll say, what's the developmental pattern? And if you have trouble with these general questions, especially after it's question 1, after reading the whole passage, I would recommend answering the specific questions, because it'll give you some reference where to return, and then you can return at the end and do the general ones. But we're just going to do these in order. It's really up to you. So a major theme of the passage, and we know that there was this fundamental transformation with Silas once he adopted Eppie, and he no longer was obsessed with gold and hoarding this gold, and she really reintroduced him to life. And so let's take a look at the choices. The corrupting influence of a materialistic society. Again, is that what the whole passage is about? No. The moral purity of young children. See, it's just talking about children and the purity. Again, that's not on point. The bittersweet brevity or shortness of childhood naiveness. Again, no. The restorative power of parental love. See, this is a broad, general answer choice. Eppie really restored him. He was the parent, and it really allowed him to re-enter society. All right, let's take a look at question 2. As compared with Silas's gold, Eppie was portrayed as what? And you can almost predict this, and we can look back into the passage. So let's just return to the passage in the beginning here. So at the very beginning, unlike the gold, which needed nothing and must be worshipped in close-locked solitude, which was hidden away from daylight and deaf to the song of birds, and started to know human tones, and this is all talking about how he was locked in by the gold. Eppie was a creature of endless claims and ever-growing desires. She was seeking and loving sunshine, living sounds, and living movement, making trials of everything with trust and new joy, and stirring the human kindness in all eyes that looked on her. So you see here we have endless claim, this ever-growing desire, these living sounds and living moments. She was really full of life, and that's the word you're looking for. And so for question 2, again, you can almost get this by elimination. Vitality, it's durable. There have to be some evidence that she wasn't destroyed or was able to maintain. Doesn't really make sense. Protection and self-sufficiency. It's definitely vitality. All right, let's take a look at question 3. Which statement best describes the technique the narrator used to represent Silas's character before he adopted? And so again, let's go back to the passage. Before he adopted, there was reference to this. So right at the beginning of the passage, we read this before. The gold needed nothing and worshipped in this closed-locked solitude, was hidden away. And then we see later on, the gold had kept his thoughts in an ever-repeating circle, leading to nothing beyond itself. And so that is referencing his life before he adopted. He was really locked in and just guarding this gold all the time. And so Let's return to question 3, the technique that the narrator uses to represent. The narrator emphasizes Siler's form of obsession by wealth by depicting his gold as requiring certain behaviors. And that definitely is a choice. Or it locked him in, and he really just felt almost beholden to the gold. All right, and let's take a look at 4 and 5. We'll do 2 more in this video. The narrator uses the phrase making trial of everything to present Epi as what? And this gives us reference again, making trial of everything. Let's take a look at line 7. So this is in the beginning again, after he referenced to his previous life. He was locked in with the gold, but Epi was a creature of endless claims and ever-growing sounds and living moments, making trial, stirring human kindness in all eyes that looked upon her. And so if she's really, it really shows that she's got this interest. Everything is, she's curious about what's going on, and this is really the answer here. I mean, friendly, there'd have to be some evidence of her being sociable, and all it's saying is she was just really intrigued and amazed and looking around her ever-growing desires. So desires, that's another synonym for curious. And remember, for the reading, they're really testing what I call the art of paraphrase. If you find evidence such as desire, they're not going to put desire as an answer choice. They just restate it as curious, and certainly not disobedient or judgmental. All right, we'll do the last question, number 5, and then we'll stop. According to the narrator, one consequence of Silas adopting Epi is that he is what? And so let's take a look. Actually, we're going to do 5 and 6 because this is a 2-part question. And whenever you have these 2-part questions, you should always scan down at the next question. This is evidence-based. It's really finding the evidence. And I think the tendency is for a lot of students to do these out of order. They look at the lines and they work backwards. But if you make a mistake with the lines, you're going to miss both of them. And so what I tell students to do is, we know that the answer is bound by this range. And it's really most of the passage. But we know it's between 9 and 63, right? And so we're just looking for some evidence in that section that would provide evidence. And it's not going to be always stated exactly. It might be restated, but we want a consequence of Silas adopting Epi. We're going to start at 9, and we'll just keep reading until we find it. And let's work through this together. So question 9, or line 9, this is talking about the gold has kept his thoughts in an ever-repeating circle, but Epi was an object compacted of changes and hopes that forced his thoughts onward, carried them far away from their old eager pacing toward the same blank limit, and carried them away to new things that would come with the coming years, when Epi would have learned to understand how her father Silas cared for her, and made him look for images of time, that time in ties and charities that bound together the families of the neighborhood. So this really looks good for evidence. Epi really forced him to look onward and carried them away to new things that would come in the coming years. And this is what Epi is really forcing Silas to do. And so if we look at the choices in 5, again, it's going to be paraphrased. Renounced his desire. Again, this is not evidence. Better understands his place in nature. Seems more accepting of help from others. This is definitely the choice. He looks forward to a different kind of future, right? Onward and the future. And the evidence really was between 11 and 16. And so you just have to kind of independently find these. And if you get it right, it'll confirm it. And here we see again, onward, carry them far away to new things that would come with coming years.